going to be sharing some of my projects tonight. I will start by talking about the idea behind each work, then share the process involved in creating it. Often this requires the use of electronic or mechanical components, computer programming, and reverse engineering. For me, the use of interactive media in my projects is a means to an end, a way to integrate each project with real life. This presentation will not be a showcase of the newest and best technologies the art world has to offer. As you will see, a lot of my projects are fairly low-tech, pieced together from available resources. But what I hope is that this presentation will provide a picture of the practical use of interactive media by a working artist. So let's start. This is one of my first projects, documentation of a bird in a box. I started thinking about realities that may exist outside my own, places I could not go, like the surface of another planet or inside a buried tomb. I tried to think of a way I could accentuate that, a way I could make the viewer feel like they were looking into another reality, separate and unattainable from their own. I made a steel box and placed a dead pigeon and wireless video camera inside. I then welded it shut. A power cord, the one caveat to the project, plugs into the side of the box. A video camera shot infrared footage using IR LEDs, which means it could see in total darkness inside the box. It transmitted video wirelessly through the walls of the container to a receiver, which then displayed it on the monitor in real time. This project gave the audience a view into another world, the inaccessible interior of the steel box. It also turned them into a voyeur. They were literally spying on the subject contained within. So this was my first real foray into using electronics in art in any of my projects. A lot of my projects deal with extrapolating a normal idea, activity, or object from everyday life and exaggerating it to the point where it becomes absurd or ironic. Several projects later, I touched on the surveillance theme again. This is the date-time box. The date-time box is a wooden box with a motion-sensing eye. When someone walks in front of the machine, it immediately prints the date and time of the action on a roll of paper and spits it out the front. The idea for the project was to create a machine that literally kept a concrete record of its own existence and surroundings. It was also an attempt at making an object that, while it functions, mocks the true purpose of similar real-world devices. Inside, this machine features a punch clock, a motion sensor, a paper roll, and a paper feed mechanism. A basic stamp microcontroller, which is a sort of programmable computer chip, controlled the machine. It would set off the punch clock, then feed paper through the mechanism when the light sensor was triggered. This is the program for the microcontroller used in the date-time box. It's pretty simple. Gets more complex later on. My next project was 1 + 1 = 2. A motor and gearhead taken from a moving Santa Claus figurine is attached to a printing calculator. Instead of a roll of paper, the calculator prints on a looped strip. A piece of wire driven by the motor hits the calculator's equal button, completing the equation 1 + 1 + 1 + 1. The calculator counts up by 1 once every 10 seconds. The result is printed on the loop of paper. As the calculator continues counting, the printed numbers eventually become obscured into solid columns of ink, denoting the orders of magnitude of the number. The calculator is recording its own activity, but in a way that's incomprehensible to the viewer. Here's a video of 1 + 1 = 2. Goes on from there. All right. First-person shooter is an attempt to extrapolate video game culture into the real world. A helmet with attached metal structure holds a small video camera in the air facing the user from behind. The user sees themselves in real time on an LCD screen in front of their face. But they are seeing themselves navigate the world from over their shoulder in a way similar that a player does playing popular video games like Doom, Halo, GoldenEye. Oh, too far. People are used to playing video games and viewing screens, but not used to interacting with others from a video game's perspective. So this piece was to try and accentuate that anomaly. Here's a video shot directly from the project's camera. This is also the inside of International Climbing Machines, where I work as an engineer designing robots primarily for the nuclear and wind energy sectors. This is the minimum wage machine. So this is what was actually in the project, in the gallery show that Max was talking about. The idea for it came to me years ago while I was working at a gas station making minimum wage. I would watch the clock and count off the money I was making 1 penny at a time. A person turns the crank on the side of the machine. A penny is paid out once every 4.97 seconds, which correlates to $7.25 an hour. It's programmable for different rates depending on where the machine is located. It was in Windsor, Ontario at one point, which minimum wage I think is $10.50 an hour, which comes to a penny, 3.5 seconds. Inside the machine is a change sorter, an infrared sensor, a motor, and other electronics. The hand crank turns the shaft of a motor. The motor acts as a generator and produces power for the rest of the electronics. 5 volts is applied to 2 basic stamps, those programmable chips, one to track time and the other to act. The first stamp counts down until a penny is needed, then triggers the second. A second microcontroller triggers the change sorter to release a penny. When a penny falls to the collector, it passes an infrared sensor, which alerts the microcontroller that the penny has indeed been released, which then resets the program. If the user stops turning the crank, power generation stops, the microcontrollers turn off, and the user stops getting paid. This is a wiring diagram for the project. Working at ICM gives me access to software like this, which makes it easy to figure out some of these projects. Here's the program code from the microcontroller that performs the actions. Remember that there's 2 microcontrollers in the project, and this is a bit more complicated than before. Here's a video of it being used. This work could be seen as an extrapolation of typical minimum wage work to a dystopian future, perhaps where the work produced becomes irrelevant in relation to the act of working itself. The person in this video is one of my friends who doesn't have a job. So. Finally, I'd like to talk about my latest project, which is called The Public Sign. With this project, I wanted to subvert typical flashy storefront advertising while at the same time give the community a public venue to express ideas. Users text a message to the displayed cell phone number, which you could also do. This message shows up in my email, which is instantaneously forwarded to my website, where a server-side script dissects the email message, screens it for vulgar words, converts it into code the sign can read, and then transmits it to the local router at the store. The router uses port forwarding to send incoming transmission wirelessly to the sign, which then displays the message. From phone to sign takes about 5 seconds in real time. Messages are posted unreviewed and almost completely uncensored. The new message posted to the sign overwrites the old, providing an impartial means for public discussion. Finally, being located in a storefront and on such a device gives the messages the air of legitimacy that would otherwise be lacking on, say, a bulletin board or other less commercial space. Here's a video of a stranger on the street texting the sign using my cell phone. I didn't tell him what to write. These are some of the recorded messages from block of time. My favorite message posted to the sign is, and I quote, "Rob E. just had an awesome date with a girl who doesn't use Twitter, so I'm letting her know via marquee," which I thought was just brilliant for the project. Anyway, a record of all the messages can be viewed online at my website. So I hope this excerpt of my projects gives you an idea of the processes I use in making art. Through the use of found and reappropriated electronics and machinery, I'm able to take the language of routine life and rewrite it to explore basic but important ideas that may otherwise go unnoticed. It is exactly technology's ubiquitous nature in our lives that makes it practical for me as an artist to use in my art making. So, thanks.